I told you about this, and this is exactly why His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales was requesting this from these two. That's right, we're talking of course about Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice. Now, as you know, Prince William has gone through quite a lot recently.
What is the one thing Prince William has been privately warning about for months? Not the Sussex situation, not the king's health, not the tabloids. This, a charity connected to Princess Eugenie, is now under formal scrutiny. The numbers do not add up. Over £119,000 spent, less than £48,000 returned, and a paper trail that is raising serious questions about where the money actually went. William saw this coming. He asked, directly, privately, for Beatrice and Eugenie to get ahead of it. They did not. And now, the exact scenario he was trying to prevent is playing out in public, with his name and his family's reputation uncomfortably close to the fallout. Today, we are going to walk through exactly what happened, why William is furious, and what this means for a branch of the royal family that was already standing on very thin ice. Let's start with what we actually know. Princess Eugenie's charity, a relatively recent venture that she attached her name and profile to, is now receiving what can only be described as serious official attention. The financial figures that have emerged from the scrutiny are the kind that demand explanation. Expenditure of over £119,000. Income returned of approximately £48,000. That is not a rounding error. That is a gap that raises a fundamental question about where the money intended for charitable purposes actually ended up. Now, to be absolutely clear, there is no suggestion at this stage that Eugenie personally misappropriated funds. That is not the allegation being made, and it would be wrong to imply otherwise. But here is the problem that royal observers and those close to William understand very well. It does not matter. The moment a charity connected to a princess of the British royal family becomes the subject of a formal financial investigation, the story belongs to the institution. The headlines do not distinguish between a hands-on management failure and a more passive reputational association. The name in the headline is what the public remembers, and the name in this headline is royal. This is exactly what William has been losing sleep over. Not just this specific situation, but the pattern. The accumulation of moments where the York branch of the family generates a story that the institution then has to quietly absorb and manage. How charity events become a problem. There is a broader issue here worth discussing honestly, because it explains a lot about how these situations develop. Large-scale charity events, the kind with hotel ballrooms, red carpet setups, professional photographers, sponsor boards, and black-tie guest lists, are extremely expensive to run. The venue, the catering, the entertainment, the PR, the staffing, it all comes before a single pound reaches the cause the event was organized to support. And when the people whose names are attached to the event are royals or celebrities, the incentive structure can become complicated. Attendance becomes about the photo opportunity as much as the donation. Sponsors pay for association, not necessarily for impact, and the person whose name is on the letterhead often has very limited visibility into the financial mechanics being run beneath them. None of that excuses the outcome when the numbers look like these, but it explains how someone with genuine intentions can end up associated with figures that are very difficult to defend. Eugenie, by most accounts, is not a cynical person. She appears to have real commitment to the causes she supports, but commitment is not management. And signing your name to an organization without rigorous oversight of how that organization operates is a mistake with consequences. The consequences are now arriving. What William actually asked for, and why they did not listen. This is the part of the story that makes William's frustration so understandable. He did not wait for this to happen and then react. He saw the conditions for it forming months ago, and he acted, privately, directly, in the way he typically operates. He went to Beatrice and Eugenie and made his position clear. He wanted them to voluntarily step back from the charities and associations that carried the most risk, not as a public statement, not as a dramatic announcement, quietly, proactively, in a way that removed the opportunity for exactly this kind of story before it had a chance to develop. The message was essentially, I am not asking you to disappear. I am asking you to remove the landmines before someone steps on them. They did not. Instead, what followed was the Mayfair moment. The photographed emotional reunion with their parents in one of London's most camera-friendly streets, which told William everything he needed to know about how his cousins were choosing to navigate their situation. Not quietly, not proactively, not with any particular sensitivity to the institutional damage being done, but publicly, visibly, and with an awareness of how images travel that could only have come from calculation. Daughters of Sarah Ferguson understand media. That is not an insult. It is simply a fact. They were raised by someone who made both brilliant and catastrophic use of the press throughout her life. The instinct to reach for a camera when things are difficult is deeply ingrained. William's instinct is the opposite. Handle it privately. Fix it before it becomes a story. And if it becomes a story anyway, have clean hands. The gap between those two approaches is where the current tension lives. The Fergie question nobody wants to answer. Here is the dimension of this situation that goes beyond Eugenie's charity and into something with potentially much larger implications. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, mother of Beatrice and Eugenie, has been a financial complication for the extended royal family for decades. The debts accumulated over the years are significant. The precise current picture is, by all accounts, unclear even to those within the family circle, and the question that William keeps returning to, privately, as a sticking point in his conversations with King Charles, is a troubling one. Where does it end? Andrew is living at the Royal Lodge, the costs of which remain a point of ongoing negotiation and controversy. He has no income. His commercial reputation is charitably non-existent. His public life is effectively over. Fergie has gone quiet, the kind of quiet that, in her case, tends to proceed rather than follow a resolution of her financial situation. The full picture of what she owes and to whom is not something anyone in the palace feels confident they fully understand. And at some point, someone may come knocking for what they are owed. When that happens, if it involves numbers significant enough to create a public story, the institution will be pulled into a mess it had no hand in creating. This is William's nightmare scenario, not because he has any obligation to resolve it, but because the royal family does not get the luxury of being uninvolved in stories that carry its members' names. The press does not write former disgraced Duke's ex-wife faces debt crisis. It writes something with royal in the headline. He cannot control what Fergie owes. He cannot control what Andrew has spent, but he was trying, through Beatrice and Eugenie, to at least control the size of the target the institution was presenting. That effort has now been complicated significantly by what has emerged about this charity, the Philip model, and why William has learned from it. There is a historical blueprint for how to handle the York branch of the family, and it was written by Prince Philip. Philip understood very clearly that every time Sarah Fergus' son appeared at a significant royal event, the attention shifted. She was impossible to ignore. She generated her own gravitational field of press interest, and her presence invariably meant that the focus of any occasion was partially diverted from where it was supposed to be. His solution was quiet and effective. Manage the invitations, control the proximity, keep the institution's calendar clean of situations where the distraction is built into the guest list. William has adopted the same logic, and it is why Beatrice and Eugenie's absence from Royal Ascot and Trooping the Colour is not, as some have suggested, a sign of active punishment or family cruelty. It is a management decision, a protective measure, the kind of thing that looks cold from the outside, but is, in institutional terms, entirely rational. The problem is that the strategy only works if the people being managed stay manageable. The moment they generate their own story, as Eugenie has now done, the attempt at containment becomes irrelevant. The story exists regardless of whose invitation list they are on. Philip's model worked partly because Fergie, for all her chaos, was not connected to ongoing formal investigations. That calculus has now changed. What comes next? The investigation will run its course. There will likely be findings. There will probably be what insiders dryly call slap-on-the-wrist accountability. Words on paper, perhaps some restructuring, almost certainly no criminal consequence for Eugenie personally. But the reputational residue does not wash off with a quiet resolution. It accumulates, and it accumulates at a moment when the York family's account with the institution is already significantly overdrawn. William's position, firm, clear, and now looking increasingly prophetic, is that he saw this coming. He offered a way to get ahead of it. The offer was not taken. What happens next between William and his cousins will likely be shaped al saws, most entirely by what the investigation concludes and how the public reacts to it. If it blows over quickly, things may return to their current level of careful, managed distance. If it escalates, if there are further financial revelations, if Fergie's situation becomes public, if Andrew's position at the Royal Lodge becomes untenable, the distance may become permanent. William does not do partial. He never has. And the thing about warnings, when they turn out to be correct, is that they are very rarely issued twice. There it is. The investigation, the warnings that went unheeded, and the fear inside the palace about where the York family story goes next. Here is my question for you. Do you think Beatrice and Eugenie have been unfairly caught up in their parents' story, or should they have been more careful about what they put their names to? That is a genuinely divided question, and I want to hear where you come down on it. Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe if you have not already. Notifications on. Because the next video connects everything we have covered this week into one clear picture of what the monarchy actually looks like heading into the second half of this year. You will not want to come to it cold. See you in the next one. Next.